Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. I want to talk to you today about something really pretty amazing. This is called dynamic TLOD, dynamic terrain level of detail. Now, the concept of this is, and it's been around since FSX, um, is that is to be able to change your level of detail in your sim as your altitude changes. Now, the reason you would want to do this is because obviously the lower your terrain level of detail setting is, the better performance you're going to get in the sim, right? Now, if you think about it, if you have a set TLOD, let's say 300, right, which is pretty high, um, a TLOD that high can give you some issues on the ground because you're close to the ground, obviously, and generating so much scenery from at quite a distance away from where you are, most of which you can't even see, which really bogs down your sim. Now, as you get higher in altitude, your frame rate increases, right? So if you let's say you've got a terrain level of detail setting of 300 on the ground, you're getting, let's say, 25 frames per second at a reasonably large airport, and you take off. By the time you get, if you're flying a jet, by the time you get to 35,000 feet, your frame rate is going to be like 60 or whatever, close to whatever your maximum available is for your particular setup. And the reason for that is because that all the detail in the terrain that's being generated is so far away from your airplane, it's not clogging up your system and slowing your system down. So ideally, what you would really want would be to have a low terrain level of detail while you're on the ground, where you can't see much beyond, the airport environment anyway. And then as you increase in altitude on departure, that terrain level of detail increases. So as you can see more of what's around you, the level of detail of what's around you increases as well. And this increases incrementally as you climb in altitude, which would give you consistent performance and good visuals, right? And conversely, when you're coming into land, as you get closer and closer to the ground, if you have just one terrain level of detail set, as you get closer to the ground, more of what's on the ground, more of the buildings and the cities and everything else is gonna be generated, and it's gonna slow your system down. So your performance, this is why your performance gets worse as you get closer to the ground. So enter dynamic terrain level of detail. Now, as I've talked to you about before, Microsoft Flight Simulator is kind of bizarrely based on FSX code. So when they wrote Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, they based it on FSX code. And they've basically been culling the FSX code out of Microsoft Flight Simulator over the last 3-4 years. Now, by the way, the reason that I'm showing you this picture is just so we have something interesting to look at while I explain this to you. Um, and back in the day, this is an idea that somebody came up with and they created a little program for it. It's very simple. It's not a complex operation. You simply want to change the terrain level of detail setting in the simulator as your altitude changes. Now, this was created for FSX. MSFS 2020 is based on FSX code, and so therefore somebody has taken that dynamic terrain level of detail program that was written for FSX and ported it over to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. I've been sort of skeptical of trying to do this because I don't really understand kind of the workings of it, but I've been following other people using it, and it seems to be quite a success. So today I figured I'm going to give it a shot. It works like a charm. Took 3 minutes to install, a couple minutes to set up. Did a test flight. It works like a charm. And so basically, what this is going to allow you to do is to get good performance and good visuals departing and arriving, like as you're increasing in altitude and decreasing in altitude. And it's not about getting the maximum FPS that you can get. What this is about is smoothness. It's about not getting the stutters on approach that happens so often in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. So there are two programs you're going to need to download and install. One of them is this Mobiflight module. Don't know what it does, don't care. It needs to be installed in order for this dynamic terrain level of detail program to work. I'll obviously put the link in the description of the video. And then you need to download this dynamic LOD, and it's actually not just a TLOD program. It adjusts both terrain level of detail and object level of detail. We'll get into that here in a second. So you simply download the two programs, you install them, and you have to run. And when you install the dynamic TLOD or dynamic LOD program, there is an installer for it. It's a simple exe file. You click on it, double click it. It opens and runs. The one thing you have to do if you start Microsoft Flight Simulator in admin mode, which there's no reason to do, you would also have to open dynamic LOD in admin mode in order for it to work. So in other words, admin, admin, or not admin, not admin. That's the only way it works. You have to launch this before you launch Microsoft Flight Simulator. There are three launch options, I think, when you initially open the program. It'll give you the option to auto launch it with Microsoft Flight Simulator, to auto launch it with FSUI PC, which I have. And also to auto launch it at the splash page, like where Microsoft Flight Simulator starts the loading process. Or you can just leave all three of those off and load it, just start it yourself manually. Like I've chosen to do. I've got a little desktop icon here, so all I'm going to do is just double click this to start the program. The program pops up, which is right here. And then start Microsoft Flight Simulator. So when you start it, all three of these things are going to be red. And the other thing I was going to say is that if you have, there's some requirements, like a software requirement. All those like little. I'm trying to think what they're called. Like runtime environment programs and stuff like that. That Microsoft installs for various things. It's a Microsoft program. It's nothing weird. If your computer doesn't have the one required to run dynamic LOD, it will install it for you. It's no big deal. So once you get it up and running, once you connect to the sim, once the sim starts and loads, this MSFS is going to turn green. Then once you're in the sim itself, the sim connect will turn green as well. And then what we have is this program. Now, I have completely dumbed down my settings to try this out. I don't want anything else interfering with it. I don't want it, the Holy Grail settings and DLDSR. Frame generation is off, as you can see here. I've got the thing still installed, but I turned it off. I don't want anything else going on while I'm doing this. I turned DLSS off. I'm using just straight TAA, my normal resolution. I do have like super high settings because it's what I have, and I just don't feel like messing with them right now. So, in order to do this, so when it initially loads, you're going to have these okay, so AGL, hopefully you guys know what that is. This functions based on your altitude above ground level, AGL, not on your mean sea level altitude, which makes perfect sense because you want this to function in relation to the terrain that you're around, right? So basically, when you turn this on, when you start this program for the first time, there's going to be three settings automatically populated. I think what they are is um, 0, 1500, and 3000. Um, I have changed it to add a fourth layer, the 1500 uh, layer, or the 5000 layer here with the 400 LOD. Now these are just the LOD levels in the sim, so which is this, you know, this slider right here. So basically, what this is, when I'm at 0 AGL, when I'm on the ground, my terrain level of detail is going to be 100, very low. As I'm climbing out, it's going to change to 200 at 1500 feet above the ground. At 3000 feet above the ground goes to 300. 5000 feet goes to 400. Um, if you want to add a new layer, you would just type in whatever AGL value you want, and then whatever TLOD you want, and then let's give it a try here. 7,000. Let's go 400, even though I've already got one. So that'll add that layer once, when you click the plus. I don't need that, so I'm going to get rid of it. Just highlight it, press the minus. Oh, why would that not go away now? Anyway, I'm going to leave this for right now. Uh, oh, okay. So you have to click it and like double click it or triple click it until the values are highlighted here. And then once that happens, then you can click the minus button. It'll get rid of the value. Now, if you want to change this, let's say you want to change this 5,000 level to 350, you just enter 350, click save, and it changes it right there. But I want it to be 400, so I'm going to highlight it again, 400, click save, good to go. Object level of detail, exactly the same thing, and this value here. It's not as impactful as terrain level of detail in terms of like performance, but it is impactful, and so you might want to, mess with this. And again, this is a type of thing you guys are going to have to explore on your own to see what values work for you. This is a really interesting one, FPS adaptation. Now, if you enable this, what it does, it limits the level of detail settings, these two settings here, once once the average frame rate drops below a certain value. So, like if you want to say, if my frame rates drop below 30 per second, I want this program, I want the LODs to be reduced to try to give you back that performance. You can do that. So if you're having performance issues, like let's say you set this up and you're having performance issues, you're having stuttering, whatever, you can enable this and it's going to reduce the LODs, TLOD 50 by 50 by 50, and it's going to reduce them to give you some performance back, and you can set how long you want it to reduce it for. This minimum LOD setting is just how low do you want it to be able to go as it's reducing the values. Really interesting concept. Um, I haven't tried that. I don't think I'm going to use it. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward to understand. So let's give it a run here. And I do want to keep those settings. So let's go to Miami. And I'm going to start off right here, runway 8 right. We're going to set that as departure, ATR 76. Let's go have a go, and I'll show you guys how this works. I have found that, you don't want to keep the window open over top of Microsoft Flight Simulator while you're using it. The only reason I'm doing that now is because just to show you the values as they change. So you can see here the session is red rather. A session is a flight. It's not a session of opening the sims, running the sim. It's a session of a flight. So now when you click the ready to fly button, let's get inside the cockpit here. Now you can see it's green. Okay, so this is a session. And here we go. So here's my frames per second. It's going to show you these values. Here's my frames per second. Let me get back there real quick. Frames per second are 43.7. Okay, now my terrain level of detail is 100. My object level of detail is 100. That corresponds to these values down here because I'm at 0 feet AGL. Now, my sim, I use Track IR5. I use the head tracker. If I just leave this window over top of Microsoft Flight Simulator, I can still interact with everything. Everything works just fine. I'm just using this to show you. Now, what's going to happen is, as we climb, my performance is going to get worse. Actually, I'm sorry. As I climb, the performance is going to get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And so what you want to do is take that better performance that you get as you get further away from the ground, and then increase your terrain level of detail so you get more visuals, more buildings, more city, from the sim. So this FPS is going to increase as we climb, and then terrain level of detail at 1500 is going to jump to 200. Then my FPS is going to drop because now I've added more level of detail to the sim. And the exact opposite is going to happen as we're coming in. It's really pretty cool. So as we're coming into land, I'm going to climb to 6,000 feet and then turn around and just come back in. I'm probably not going to actually land, but just to show you. So as we're coming back in, the frames per second value is going to get lower and lower and lower as we get closer to the ground. But when we hit 3,000 feet and it drops from 400 to 300, this value is going to increase quite a bit because you've given it. You've reduced the load on the sim and given it more room to perform. So your performance is going to get much better. Same thing is going to happen at 1,500 feet. It's really pretty fascinating. I'm not worried at all about like how my sim is performing in terms of like frames per second or stuttering. I don't care. I'm just showing you guys this whole thing. So let's get going. Flight controls are free. Let's get this back going here and bring in the power. Notch. I've actually got to trim the airplane. I haven't trimmed the plane. Alright, so there's 80. Again, this is not meant to be a display of flying excellence here. So let's get airborne. Alright. And positive ready to climb, gears coming up. So you can see now AGL also gives you your flight per minute, or your feet per minute climb or descent, and the trend whether you're in a climb or a descent. So I want to keep an eye on this this setting right here, this 450. Let's go indicated airspeed, heading mode. Oh damn, they're autopilot. Alright. So what do I have it set to? 6,000. Let's just go a little higher than that. Alright. So here we go. And we'll take a look outside. Now this is going to hit 1,500 and it's going to jump from 100 to 200 in terrain level of detail. See that? And you can see the change. You can see actually a physical change there. And now again, FPS dropped a little bit. And now as we continue to climb, once we get to 3,000, it's going to jump to 300 level of detail. Try to get us a good look outside here. can see the FPS is increasing as we go higher because there's less being rendered. Now watch this at 3,000 feet. See that? You can see things being filtered in. And again, FPS drops because now my terrain level detail is 300. And I want to see here real quick. Let's make a turn here. Alright. Actually, I'll put my flaps up. And again, the performance is not the point of this video. $4,300 feet. I'm going to turn back now towards something that we can actually see. Let's get that value back up, 4,800 feet. Now watch what happens when we hit 5,000. You can see everything gets filtered in a little bit more, and the frames per second decreases. Now we're at 400 terrain level detail. So now what I'm going to do, kick off the autopilot, and pull the power back. And we are at 400 terrain level detail. Bring in some flaps. And now, let's watch as we go through power all the way out here. Trim for descent. Alright, now let's watch what happens. Look at the city area as we go through 5,000 feet. And watch the frames per second. The frames per second is 32 right now. It's going to go up. Get close, get close. See that? Now this is going to start increasing. Now my terrain level detail is 300. What I should have done is turned off the weather. That's what I really should have done actually before I did this. So now we keep going at 3,000 feet. We're again going to get a reduction in the terrain level of detail. Let's see what we can see here. See that? Now again, it's not meant to increase performance. It's just meant to give you more headroom to maintain your performance as you get closer to the ground. Now we're at 200 terrain level of detail. And once we get down below 1,500, it will reduce it even further. See how the frames per second is dropping? Once we get below 1,500 feet here, terrain level detail is going to drop again to 100, and it's going to open up some more performance for us. And you could see right in here the buildings kind of disappear. See that jump now up to 38? So you could see like a lot of the buildings in, you know, in the neighborhoods and stuff drop off. And what this allows us to do just allows us to maintain performance as we get lower to the ground. Now this, again, I haven't messed with this at all in terms of like, you know, what settings are going to be ideal for me. But the concept is amazing. And my gear down. This isn't flying. I'm not really. I'm just gonna do this landing just because I can't help myself. But the concept works perfectly. Again, I haven't tested it with, you know, with any different settings. Like what I really want to do now is test this with the Holy Grail settings and with frame gen.
200.
And see if I can just kind of tweak things a little bit. I don't
100.
really have to do much tweaking at all with those
50,
with that combination.
40, 30, 20, 10.
There's a nice one. I don't really have to do much of a change with that combination of settings because I get really good performance with the frame gen and the Holy Grail settings. But if you guys are having difficulty, I know a lot for whatever reason, some people can't run the Holy Grail settings, doesn't work for them. Some people can't get the frame gen to start or to work well. You know, it's totally understandable. If that's you, this is really a great option because it's this. And you can see right now my terrain level of detail in the sim is 100 because I'm at, you know, below 1,500 feet AGL. So this could be an amazing tool for you guys that are having difficulty with any of the other, you know, setups or mods that I've shown you. And what I would recommend doing if you're having some issues, you know, frame rate issues, performance issues, I would recommend just leaving your, like, whatever your stock settings are right now, I would leave them exactly alone and then run this dynamic LOD and see if it irons out the problems that you're having, right? The couple other things to mention. So there's 3 profile settings, so you can save 3 different profiles. If one of them is a VR profile, there's a little checkbox here for the VR profile. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I think this could really be super helpful to a lot of people. Um, the concept is amazing, and I think it's going to work very, very well for a lot of people. As far as like problems, I haven't, you know, come across anybody having issues from having installed this, from having used it. I was hesitant for a while myself, like I said, but it literally took 3 minutes to set up and get going, and seems to work perfectly fine. As I get a chance to test it more with with the settings. I am going to report back when I have a chance to try it with the Holy Grail settings. The only other thing I will mention before we close out here, the maximum setting that you use in terrain level of detail, whatever it happens to be. In my case, it's 4,000 or 400 rather. You have to let's go back here and close out of this flight. And what's going to happen is it's going to get reset to 400. This right here, reset TLD after session. Again, a session is a flight. Reset TLD after session 2, whatever. So I've got it set back to 400, and I'll tell you why. And you can see here. See, now it's back to 400. The reason is the maximum value you have set in the sim before you start a flight, aka session, is the max that this is going to give you in the dynamic LOD program. In other words, if I have, before I start a flight, if I have TLOD set to 200 and I have it here 300 and 400 in the sim or in this program, it might not. I don't think it is actually going to go to 300 or 400. It's only going to go to whatever the maximum is that you have set here. So whatever you think is the maximum you're going to be able to use, set that before your flight in here. Again, what I would do is start with your standard settings right now as they are. So whatever your terrain level of detail setting is right now, I would set that as your maximum for I think it's 3,000 I think it goes 0, 1500, 3,000. The reason there's not much, I mean, I added one for 5,400, but the reason there's nothing much above 3,000 is it doesn't affect your performance as much once you get to 4, 5, 7,000 feet, 10,000, whatever. The other thing that is mentioned with the program, don't set a ton of these. I mean, you can set as many as you want. Don't set 15 of them because, like I said, once you get above a certain altitude, it's not going to make much of a difference anyway. You're going to get the maximum benefit from the program. And also, don't go from 100 and then at 1,500 feet set it to 400. Don't have extreme changes in value. You can change it to whatever you want. It doesn't have to be 100, 200. It doesn't have to be even numbers. You can have it 100 here, 125 here, 175 here. That's perfectly fine. Just don't put extreme value changes and don't, put 30 different. I don't know how many you can add, but just don't add like a whole bunch of them. I'm going to play around with this and see what makes sense for me. Um, and again, like with this FPS adaptation, worth a try if you're having issues. It'll automatically lower your LODs when you get below a certain target frames per second. I'm gonna definitely be checking this out some more and be working with it some more and see how it works and see what I can get it to do and see if there's any flaws. But just wanted to share this one with you guys, and hopefully this is going to make a really big difference, really big improvement for some of you. Thank you again for watching. Please leave your comments, and one of the things that's happened in the last couple of videos that I've done, there's been so many comments and so many people adding their experience, what happened, with their sim, with whatever settings they tried, and what did work, what didn't work, and other people responding with similar experiences or different experiences. Please join in the conversation in the comments. It's awesome. It helps other people. Also helps me to understand what works and what doesn't work that I can then turn around and share with the wider group. Really appreciate it, guys, and we'll talk soon.